and welcome to another episode of our Conversations with Coaches. Today, I'm happy to introduce Irene Riad, a professional certified coach, an EMCC senior practitioner, mentor, trainer, supervisor for coaches. And we are going to be discussing an extremely interesting topic, which is trauma recovery coaching. Irene, I'm happy to see you today. Please introduce yourself and what you do.
Happy to be here. Thank you to be here, Luba. Well, you've done a great introduction. What could I add? Yes, I specialize in trauma recovery. And I also specialize in depth coaching for executives and entrepreneurial leaders. The work I do pretty much involves the neuroscience of trauma recovery, also Jungian psychology, and how entrepreneurial success mindset all kind of connect together. I'm the founder of SiteSet, which is the Institute of Authentic Leadership Culture, and soon to be an author, fingers crossed, end of the year. And really the work that I do is enabling my clients to step fully into their authenticity and their next level of success or fulfillment.
Thanks for sharing. This is a wonderful intro. And Irene is based in Albania and has a diverse intercultural experience, both personal and professional. So that is great. I got very interested in your coaching niche, trauma recovery coaching. As a coach trainer, I know that a lot of newer coaches are very conscious about the word trauma. And it instills some fear in them when trauma is brought up. On the other hand, personally, when I was doing my certification in mindfulness, we had some workshops on trauma orientation, and I found it to be super beneficial for a helping professional to be trauma informed. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about trauma recovery coaching and what it is and how it's different from therapy.
Yeah, I love that question. And it's one that I continuously talk about because trauma is heavily attached to the medical world, therapy world, the world that somehow uses medicine, treatment, diagnosis, and fair enough, some people may need that. But it's not only for that side of the professions using that. Trauma in itself is a disconnection from self. When you have a traumatic impact from a situation, and we're not going to go into whether it is big or small, it doesn't matter. The impact of it has caused a huge disconnect from who we are, from our true self. And understanding what that means on a physiological level, psychological level, emotional level, relational level, that's what we learn in the trauma recovery or trauma-informed content, whether it is a coaching modality or in any other, like going to a course just for education. Understanding those implications allow us as coaches to know really what we are working with and how to work with it. So trauma may sound as a scary word. I've trained my ear to hear setbacks when I hear the word trauma. I hear big challenges. I hear limiting beliefs or limiting patterns or something that really keeps us stuck. These are all words that are interchangeable, could be interchangeable with trauma. So I'm trying to bust that myth that trauma is only connected to therapy or medical professions, because it's not. It's a human condition. We all, I would dare say, have some element of recovery that we're going through. Not equally the same, of course. I'm not minimizing those who've had really dramatic or acute or prolonged abuse and things that have caused bigger impact on them. But just to simplify it a little bit for coaches who might fear that this is something above the coaching profession, it is not. It is our role, though, to get educated, to be informed, and to lean into it and kind of work on our own fears. And it expands our capacity emotionally, physically, mentally, so that we are confident and capable of holding the safe space that our clients need.
These are great insights and very deep thoughts. Thank you very much for that. If we go into specifics, how would the work of a trauma-informed or trauma recovery coach be different from the work of a therapist that works with trauma?
Yeah, so in trauma recovery coaching, we don't diagnose. So I would never ask or try to figure out if somebody has trauma or not. It's not my issue. Because again, I would be labeling. That's in the coaching world. We don't want to label that on a client because it's not an identity. It's not something that they have forever. So, and I think in therapy, there is a little bit of diagnosing because they work in a way where maybe diagnosing and understanding maybe which kind of trauma, when it started, all the details. We don't. We have it as an education. We know that it could come up, and we are just being attentive when something is happening that it could be. And again, that word never comes up in my discussions with clients. Well, not say never, yeah, but I don't bring it up unless they do. They might want to bring it up. So diagnosing is something we don't do.
Thank you for sharing. That was exactly my question. How trauma-informed are your clients? Do they seek specifically trauma recovery coaching? Do they want to work with you as a trauma recovery coach? Do they label something in them as a trauma when they come to you? Or it's just the general, I guess, approach that you use in your work, no matter what type of request a client brings to you?
Yeah, I have both kinds. So I don't advertise that I do trauma recovery work. It's on my website. I talk about it, but my work is to help executives and leaders and entrepreneurial spirited people to achieve what they want to achieve. Now, in my initial session, chemistry session, discovery session, I introduced myself as someone who is specialized in a few modalities that I mentioned earlier: trauma recovery, Jungian psychology, entrepreneurial mindset. So I can give them an understanding of where I find my own strength in how I coach, how I'm unique. What they pick up is usually something I pay attention to. If they had any questions, then I pay attention to what is interesting for them. And if they are coming knowing that they want to work with me because I have this specialty of trauma recovery coaching, then there could be something there that is worth exploring more. And the more educated they are already, that's actually a bit easier, because then I could share with them a little bit more freely about a little bit of trauma education or how it could support why they're coming in for the discussion. If they don't think about it, they don't touch on it, and their work is mainly about growing their leadership, growing their business, it's far away from any trauma recovery work needed. That's also very beautiful. Now, it depends on the journey that we take. There could be elements that, with my education, my understanding, make in my head some connections to any kind of trauma impact. I would have this, like the discernment as a coach. We sense whether whether my trust has been built enough, that we sense whether the client would be ready to talk about something that was huge in their life. So we have to sense check. And it's, I may never, again, also still with some clients talk about the word trauma, but bring it as setbacks that have huge impact, challenges that have held them back. Because even the word trauma could trigger a trauma person or a traumatized person. So we're not going to throw that word lightly. And it doesn't need to come up in any conversation. Unless, as I said, initially, they have picked up on the word because I introduced how I could help and see where I could help. Then I am sensitive to where they are in that space of would they be interested to be educated. And that could be also in the contracting. Would they like some trauma education or psychoeducation along the journey? And so it's contracted at the beginning. And then sense checked intuitively or even very directly, checking in if that's something of interest, but it has to be contracted.
I know that we are getting sidetracked a little bit possibly, but I also think it's excellent that you are talking about these chemistry calls and sense checking with a client, not just overwhelming them with the richness of your experience or qualifications or imposing your approach on them, but asking them first what the situation is like, what they want to gain, and then picking those of your experiences that might resonate with them. I do pretty much the same thing, and I think as this episode is for coaches, this is a great tip for everyone who wants to improve or who wants to enhance their chemistry calls and how to make them more client-centered.
Absolutely. You picked up something here also that choice is very important for people who may have had some traumatic impacts. We learn that in the education, that voice and choice. So them voicing their needs, but also choosing what they want to work on, when are they ready, are very important because we don't want to overwhelm them. And it's not our agenda as coaches, it's theirs. And it's very important as well. It reminded me that voice and choice are extremely important in this kind of work.
Could you give some specific examples of topics that clients may want to work on and you think that a trauma recovery approach would be appropriate there? Maybe something from your experience, if you're able to share those?
Yeah, absolutely. So a common one is around, they call it emotional intelligence. So whenever I hear the word emotional intelligence, it could be that, and it could be around emotional regulation, which sometimes some practitioners included in intelligence, but it has another way of looking at the body and how are we voicing our needs, how are we regulating the emotion, the intense emotions in the moment. So topics around leaders who want to have a greater impact could bring in the emotional intelligence, emotional regulation. Wherever leaders or whoever I work with have an area around conflict conversations or courageous conversations, however they are titled, the fear of conflict not necessarily has to be tied to trauma, but there could be elements there we start to explore. What is the big loss or fear around difference of opinion? People pleasing could have areas that go back to the fear of loss or the fear of not belonging, or things that go back to childhood experiences, usually have a trauma situation that has caused them to think a certain way. People who feel that they are just burned out, they may come to me as stressed, burned out, anxious. Leaders who want to find more calm and peace may have elements that take us back to exploring what has caused this pattern to be on autopilot. So they look very normal. I mean, they don't necessarily need to have any trauma-related issue. It's just another lens that can go really deep if needed.
This morning, I was having a mentoring session with a coach, and we talked about how we need to be mindful of clients' rational experiences and emotional experiences, even if at the rational level, they can justify a solution or they know the answer, right? But they're not committed because there might be an emotional imprint, as I called it, that prevents them from moving forward. I think this is probably related to what you were just sharing.
Absolutely. And I'm so happy you said imprint. Because I purposefully try to change this narrative around wounds. Lots of people like to say wounds, the wounded child, the emotional wound. And I think this has its origins, maybe it has its place. But I'd like to debate that and argue that, because we are not damaged, we are not broken, even with our trauma. We are not damaged. We are not broken. There's nothing to fix. We have imprints, these patterns that just have happened on and on and on for such a long time. It's like putting an imprint. This is just how it goes in the body. And this connects so much to the work of connecting how the psychology, like Jungian psychology, looks at emotions that have been ingrained in us, beliefs that have been ingrained for such a long time as imprints. So they definitely can change, but with intention and with a path that has repetitive ways that shift and turn or shape a new imprint, a new way that's more healthy, that's more serving. So absolutely.
That's interesting. So now that clients brought those topics and themes of stuckness emerged in your sessions, and you recognize there might be a need for a trauma recovery approach, what would be some of the interventions, for the lack of a better word, that a trauma recovery coach can use? Generally, we say that in coaching, we stay in the present and in the future. We don't explore the past. Is it okay for a trauma recovery coaching approach to dive into the past, or how do you work on that?
Yes, it is okay to dive in the past, only if it's serving to move us forward. Because similarly, trauma recovery coaching is about the present and the future. But our ear is trained to hear if something in the past is keeping my client unable to move forward or stay present. That's our duty as trained and specialized in that area, that we go there with limitations. Again, we're not going there to fix it. We're not going there to process the trauma with them. We're not even needing to know the details. How we do it is we use the concepts of beliefs, habits, and understanding that we have. What came to my mind now is that we have certain lies that we've believed, and we talk about lies, the three big lies that trauma survivors, as we call them, we call us, believe them, that I am helpless, that it was my fault, and there's something wrong with me. So they're beliefs, we call them lies, and we're trying to, so we may need to go a little bit back to know when was it that the person first heard that belief. They might say, oh, when I was 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever that age was, I was always told I'm not good enough. I'm not going to pass I'm too lazy, whatever it was. And so we do body work, which is what trauma trained coaches learn to do, very much like just Gestalt, very similar concepts. Just call it body work, but it's finding that emotion in the body, naming it, exercises that have to do finding the message. What is that emotion telling you? There are exercises where we take that emotion out of the body. So some visualization helps. I work a lot with visualization and active imagination. Active imagination is a word coined by Carl Jung. So it's more of a Jungian philosophy, but I merge the two because it's very powerful for helping clients who may go to a situation in the past and then visualize a new movement forward, or use active imagination. So helping them work with the imagination, maybe initially an area of resistance because it's a muscle. We're not really trained, so may take some time to help them go as far as they want to imagine and take themselves to a new place that allows them to be fully present in the here and now, or may have taken a few steps and we've been able to move forward to where do they want to see themselves in the future or in the near, in the next moment.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing. Now, as you were mentioning all the different approaches that you are trained in and all the different approaches that you use in your work, I also know that you are credentialed with 2 very prominent and large coaching organizations, such as ICF and EMCC. So I guess I'm getting a bit sidetracked again here, but I think it's an important topic. How do you manage to combine all these approaches seamlessly in your coaching approach? I know that newer coaches, again, that they're trying to find their own style, they're trying to be creative and do something they like, but on the other hand, they feel like they are bound by the code of ethics, or there are certain things that they are not the best practices in their coaching organization. And so how do you resolve this dilemma for yourself?
Yeah, it is actually something I had to think a lot about, because the third organization I am affiliated with is the International Association of Trauma Recovery. So these 3 together, they have many similarities. So they all have, like, the International Association of Trauma Recovery fulfills all the ICF 8 competencies, which are very similar to EMCC competencies. So in terms of the core competencies, they're common. We abide by them. Now, it's the preferences of what we use. Like, if I am someone who likes to use more of Gestalt, so more connecting to the body, using myself as a tool, it's figuring out what modalities come naturally to me, how I want to use them. It takes practice because we go on courses. Myself, I've gone on many courses. I pick up the modality pieces that fit with me. So there are colleagues in the trauma recovery coaching world who probably may do things maybe outside of ICF and EMCC requirements and more closer to therapy if they are therapists. I'm not a therapist. I'm purely a coach. I'm ICF, EMCC certified, and I bring in those exercises and modalities from the International Association of Trauma Recovery into my work, where I still very much hold coaching as the main focus, getting from the here and now, moving forward. And actually, maybe the other thing to add is that there is a bit of a supervision type of coaching in the trauma recovery practice. And I can go into a little bit more clarity there if needed.
Yes, please. That would be a very great educational piece.
Thank you. Absolutely. So in the coaching, when we do trauma recovery coaching, every session may not need to have a goal. So we learn in coaching supervision, it's really about being in the garden, walking side by side. There's nowhere to go, no place to be. It's really helping the coach in the coaching supervision, getting really to understand who they are. Why are they thinking that way? How to help them so that they could help their clients. That same concept is what really holds trauma recovery coaching when I am intentionally using trauma recovery modality in my session. So some sessions with my clients, when I realize this is really a little bit more about trauma recovery, whether it is about an emotion, we end up going somewhere that was not planned, then I know in that session, I drop the goal that was initially stated. I don't need to go back to it because things have shifted. I do recontract. But in trauma recovery coaching, the aim is that the client feels fully heard, fully seen. They understand a bit more about themselves. I'm with them in the moment, wherever that moment is in the past. So coaching supervision is more similar to trauma recovery coaching in that aspect. It's still with clients, not with coaches, but it stays with them versus trying to reach a goal that is specific to whatever it was they stated at the beginning.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm imagining this type of work may need more sessions. Like how long is it recommended in coaching engagement, would you say?
Absolutely. You're spot on. So the work I do, I split it into 3 general packages just because people may not be ready at the very beginning to commit to a longer term. So, but generally, I find that we could start with 4 months, and usually my sessions in the first 2 months are almost weekly. I say almost because it could be just three times a week, but it's not like the typical executive coaching leadership where it's just once a month or maybe twice a month. No, in that kind of work, when I know from the beginning that this would be needed, the shortest amount of time is 4 months, and those first 2 months, I make sure that the person is ready and available to meet me once a week. The preferred time for real transformation is 6 months. And I explain that to my client just so that they choose, they have that choice, and we could shift. But around 20 sessions is something that they would really have started. I call it the discovery phase that we do in the beginning, really gets its attention. The discernment phase, I say in the middle, and then the creative phase where they are creating their future self. So that's typically 6 months.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sure that a lot of coaches listening would find this part of your practice very valuable.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And it's going to depend on how every coach and client contract it. But I feel I've found that this work takes time, and clients may want to rush it also, but it doesn't help them. And this work needs time, connection to deeper emotions. And if done too quickly or done too fast, it just adds on to the trauma. It does not help.
Right. Towards the end of your coaching engagements, do you somehow measure success or return on this coaching for clients? How do you evaluate progress together with your clients?
Yeah, I have a few ways. I tend to use an emotional intelligence psychometric tool because it is a very important tool that when within a 6-month period, the tool that I use looks at 8 areas, and it's just a self assessment, but then they're able to use it as a quantitative if they wanted a quantitative thing. It's an option. You don't have to do it. The other measurement is helping them kind of name how much they feel they're in command, how much agency they feel. So typically when I do one-to-one, there's not really a questionnaire that I have to have, but I give them the option that they could use an emotional intelligence, like a barometer, see where we are today. It's helpful even just in the language of emotions, because that's a key learning point on the journey. It's helpful for clients to understand emotional language. So I'm gonna stop here. I feel
I lost you.
where
Yeah,
did you lose me?
I lost you when you were saying about that barometer. So
Okay, I'll
could you
repeat.
maybe a couple of last phrases? Would be great
Yes.
to capture them again. Thank you.
So I use this emotional intelligence questionnaire as a barometer, as a starting point. It's helpful because there is a structure to emotional language in terms of what are the 8 competencies we're looking at. It's a starting point, and it's used at the end. Again, self-assessment questionnaire, how do they feel about themselves? And all the time there is a shift in how they feel. Qualitatively, it's really checking in how more agency, really, it's all about the command that they have over their emotional state. How do they identify themselves? Whom do they see themselves moving forward? So these questions towards the end really give the client a deeper understanding of how much they have changed and shifted. And we look at what patterns have changed and shifted. So there's a lot you can do, whether it is a quantitative kind of assessment or more qualitative checking together how we started, where we ended.
For sharing. What would you recommend to someone who wants to start using a trauma recovery coaching approach? How do they get started?
I would really, recommend where I got trained. I really value the learning I got there. They don't necessarily have to do the whole full program. There are just courses really going into, whether it is the International Association of Trauma Recovery. It's all virtual, so I did it from my home. But that association is very helpful, because should that be something you really want to continue in, then you know all these courses, whether you want to take the course route, just some courses, or you actually want to take the very full program. It's a 6-month program. There's a foundational one. There's an advanced one. Then you know that you're getting trained from an association that is fully focused on trauma recovery and coaching, period. It's not for therapists. I mean, therapists definitely go there, but it's not to become a therapist. It's pure coaching, and it's heavily loaded and enforced with trauma recovery.
And you mentioned some other approaches like body work, maybe somatic coaching to a certain extent, or Gestalt, or some other approaches. Would any of those be helpful or necessary to do trauma recovery work?
I think they would be added growth, because Gestalt is a very powerful tool that I actually started using before I understood trauma recovery, because I was into the ICF executive route earlier. So when you do learn more about how the body works and how you as a coach work with your body, extremely helpful. I think actually embodiment work, Gestalt embodiment. So yeah, to your point, trauma recovery may give you the education. Like if you go to any trauma-informed sessions, classes anywhere, it doesn't have to be where I took it, they will give you the information, making sure that you actually apply it in body work. Even yoga, if you're into yoga, aside of coaching, it may help you connect with how body movements release emotion or contract emotion. And then you're creatively bringing in movement into your sessions, understanding how your head says a lot, how your stillness or movement says a lot. So any body work is extremely important.
I appreciate you sharing today. I recognize there's a lot of experience that goes into using all these approaches so effortlessly as you talk about them so smoothly. I know it's a lot more difficult to do than to talk about it.
Yeah, appreciate that, because it's not all intellectual. It's not all information. It's really intuitive. And I think for coaches, what I would really encourage them is for them, practice really listening to your body. And for me, that was a strange thing, because I couldn't listen to, what do you mean listen to my body? And that takes some practice, like the work of listening to my hunches, my intuition, not necessarily reacting to them, but once we listen and understand what do I need in this moment, we get grounded ourselves. And the most important work in trauma recovery coaching is the coach taking care of themselves. Even in the education of trauma recovery coaching work, if I'm unable to take care of myself physically, emotionally, biologically, am I eating well? Am I sleeping well? It's going to be hard to be attentive and give your all to the client. And there is something in the learning that we call attunement. So we learn how to attune. I think very similar in the coaching industry, where we have deeper awareness. But attunement means that you're very attuned to your own state, like how is your nervous system? Because that nervous system, and I think in the coaching world, it might be called energy, it could be called different words, but how we feel and the energy we put off reaches the client. So that healthy awareness of our body is extremely important for the client.
An important reminder, a very important reminder. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about trauma recovery coaching? We'll be wrapping up soon, but I still want to make sure, you know, everything that's important, it does get said.
Yeah, I think I feel that trauma recovery is an essential piece in every coach's journey. If it's not yet in all the coaching programs, I feel it's going to come soon. So as I feel understanding how it has impacted our life, even if we don't think we have trauma, open our mind and just get curious. It allows us to be so much more compassionate to ourselves and to the client. So any trauma recovery education and practice is, any trauma recovery education and practice will bring so much meaning and joy to the coach and their clients, and a lot more effectiveness.
Beautiful. On this positive note, we are going to be wrapping up. Thank you so much, Irene, again, for sharing your wisdom and so much practical experience, not only around trauma recovery coaching approach, but also about how to integrate that into your practice and how to make sure your practice is as client-centered as it can be.
Thank you so much, Luba, for having me. I really enjoyed this session, and I'm wishing you and your coaches and your clients all the best.
Thank you.